Welcome to Shore Perspectives, a community feature of WESR Radio, highlighting the spirit of the shore from those who call it home.
My name is Margaret Van Clief, and I live in Cape Charles, Virginia. I have always been an outdoors person, absolutely. I come from a long line of outdoors people. My mom and dad were both naturalists in their own way, as was my dad's mom. Spent a lot of time walking on beaches, looking down, often looking for shells with my grandmother, walking out in meadows, riding horses. I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, in Albemarle County, so I was a mountain girl for many years. Spent a lot of time in the woods. That's where pretty much all of my free time has been spent. A mountain girl on the eastern shore of Virginia. I'll tell you what, there were a number of different ways that I got myself here. I grew up visiting the Chesapeake Bay quite a bit as well. I did grow up near the water. My folks were really very water-based. Dad lived in Matthews over on the other side of the bay for a while, and my mom had a place on the Rappahannock River. So I felt very connected to the landscape and the waterways here. And then my dad moved to Cape Charles, and I started thinking, I was in Charlottesville and I was in a job that I was, kind of ready to move on from. It was sort of an after college job. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna up and move to the Eastern Shore. I love it so much with Dad. He would take me driving. He'd take me out on all the side roads. We'd go out to Oyster, we'd go up to Bayford, and he'd take me all around just showing me these neat places and really hooked me into the landscape. And then I took a job in 2008 working with a political campaign, and I was training and recruiting volunteers for the campaign, and so fell in love with the people I met. It was a ridiculous number of hours for a job. I didn't have time to really explore anything, but the people who came into my office and their willing spirit and their friendliness was so important to me that I finished that job and sent an email to volunteers right away and said, who's got any connection that I can have with the Eastern Shore of Virginia? I'm happy to work anywhere. I just really want to move here, but I don't want to move here without a job. And through that, I found Dave Burden at Southeast Expeditions and became a kayak guide with him for that first summer. So I just I started thinking, okay, this is really good. If I can have a job as a kayak guide, I'll figure out what's going to happen in the winter. And lo and behold, about a month before my first summer at the kayak shop ended, the Nature Conservancy posted for a position as a marine field technician, which is an assistant to the oyster restoration program at the time. We're doing more with our marine restoration work now than this was 2009. So I came on as an assistant to Bo Lusk as my winter position. And then that started me on a series of seasonal gigs. So for 6 summers, I was with the kayak shop. And as soon as kayak season would wrap up, I'd come out of board shorts, put on long johns and chest waders, and I'd be out on the islands collecting oyster samples and bringing them in. What came from that was people would ask, I was 30 years old when I started the kayak job. That's not an old person, but it's, when you're 30 years old, you start thinking about, well, okay, I can't be seasonal for the rest of my life. What can I do? And people would say, Margaret, what are you going to do when you grow up? Which I refused to do. But I said, well, my background is in creative writing and literature. I have a bachelor's in English, basically. But I really want to work with a conservation organization. I'd been aware of I work for the Nature Conservancy. And I'd been aware of the Nature Conservancy and actually had been a member since I was 14 years old. My grandmother, who I mentioned before, was very involved, as well as other family members. And I said, well, I guess I need to go and take a grant writing class and learn how to write some funding so that they can hire an outreach and education coordinator for the Nature Conservancy's Virginia Coast Reserve. I'm a procrastinator. I didn't get around to doing that. 2 or 3 years later, our new director, who's Jill Bieri, came on, and she realized that really in order to continue the conservation and restoration work that we're doing here, we needed a community outreach program, and we needed someone to be working with school kids, but with adults as well, helping to connect people with nature more and with our properties and with our work. And so they hired for the position, and I was the one who was hired for it. So it is literally the job that I would describe when people say, okay, if you could do whatever you wanted on the shore, what would you do? I said, well, I guess I would create this job for myself, which is not how it turned out. She created the job in the program, and now we're a 2.5 person program that's really robust. I came into work early this morning so I could go for a walk on this trail. This is a place that is available. This is the trail where we are is open to the public as well. But this is where I do a lot of my work, where a lot of us do our work. There's a 3-mile birding trail that we're standing right off of right now. We're in the hardwood forest section of this trail. And our office is in the middle of Brownsville Preserve. It's a 1,200 acre preserve. We're bordered by salt marsh creeks on either side, so we have access to the barrier islands. We have access to other creeks where we do kayaking with 7th grade students. We have every 5th and 7th grader and high school biology or ecology student participates in field experiences with the Nature Conservancy that we plan with their teachers, and then we provide funding through some grant funding we have and other funding to make it so it's a free experience for the school system as well. And so a lot of that goes on here. We also do a lot of public walks here, and it's also just an important place where all of us take our reflection. I mentioned that I grew up I've always played in the woods. I've always in nature in general, beaches as well, woods, marsh, wherever, just get me outside. It's not always a place only for play, it's a place for reflection. Look, some snow. Thanks, Grammy. It's a place where you can find reflection and where you can find peace, emotional stability. If I'm having a day where I can get overwhelmed, it's a tough job. We do a lot of work, and it's hard work, and you can get a little stressed out, but you can come out into the woods and it really helps center me. Well, I'll tell you, the first thing I would just say is get outside. If you live in the country, you've got a lot of access, right? But if you live in a trailer park, there's a tree somewhere, there's a bush that a butterfly might land on, there's a dandelion growing. Just get outside and take some time to take a deep breath and really connect. And one of the things that's so wonderful about the Eastern Shore, in Virginia particularly, to me, is the amount of conservation that's been done here that really helps us to have these spaces where we can go and where we can get these deep breaths and where you can run or do whatever you want to do. As long as you're not messing stuff up. The Nature Conservancy has been conserving property here for 50 years. We're actually in our 50th anniversary of the Virginia Coast Reserve with the Nature Conservancy. And there have been other organizations here as well that have helped to build this legacy. But the amount of conservation that goes on the Eastern Shore of Virginia means that there are still these wild places where people can go. They're accessible, they're free, they're open to the public. Certainly every guided activity we do is free and open to the public. There are also a lot of great volunteer opportunities that I'm involved with. People help us. We have the largest seagrass restoration project on the planet going on in the seaside bays of Virginia's Eastern Shore, and that is fueled by volunteers. We've got oyster restoration going on to help protect our shorelines. We've got these field trips that we're taking, and we have volunteers that come and help us connect with these kids and teachers. There are all kinds of different ways that I in particular can help people get connected, but you can do it on your own as well. Right. This is, the whole Eastern Shore is a huge, important place for bird migration, whether we're talking songbirds like warblers, or shorebirds like whimbrel and oyster catchers and plovers. We have so many different species, particularly of flighted animals, birds and butterflies, that do come here and take their rest along their migratory patterns. But there are all kinds of mammals around as well. If you're romping and playing, you're less likely to see them, but I've been in these woods out here and I've seen deer and fox. I've seen evidence of raccoon, possums. People see otters in the creeks. There are all kinds of great frogs and turtles and insects. I love insects. I mean, if you walk along and you see a little leaf and you flip it over, you might find a leafhopper that's like 5 different colors, this tiny little insect that's right there. And all kinds of wonderful plant species. There's a huge variety of biodiversity that you can find on the conserved properties of the Eastern Shore, and it changes with every season. You could come and walk on the trail on Brownsville Preserve every single day, and it would be a little bit different every time you come out, for sure. And it's my absolute pleasure and my passion to connect people with the work that we're doing here in case they want to help out, but also simply to connect them with the benefits of nature and of just getting outside and taking a deep, clean breath.
For more information about the Nature Conservancy's Brownsville Preserve and Nassauatics, visit nature.org or call 442-4039. For Shore Perspectives and WESR Radio, I'm Kelley Gaskell.